I planned his mother's 60th birthday party for 3 months. I booked the venue, designed the invitations, coordinated with caterers. I spent 2 weeks arranging a photo slideshow of her entire life. And when she opened my gift, a restored scrapbook of her late mother's recipes, she cried. Then her son stood up, grabbed the microphone, and said I'd never be wife material. In front of 78 people. While I was still holding the cake knife. My name is Emma. I'm 29, a project coordinator for a nonprofit in Portland, and I'd been with Daniel for 6 years. 6 years of being the cool girlfriend, the one who didn't push, didn't nag, didn't ask where the relationship was going because I trusted him when he said, "We're solid, Em. We don't need a piece of paper to prove anything." I believed that. I actually believed it. Daniel was 33, a sales director at a tech startup, the kind of guy who wore confidence like cologne, just enough to be attractive, too much to be trustworthy. But I didn't see that then. I saw someone ambitious, charming, someone whose mother adored me, whose friends always said, "You two are perfect together." His mother, Linda, was a retired teacher, warm and sentimental in a way Daniel never quite inherited. She'd lost her own mother 2 years earlier, and I knew she still kept her recipe box on the kitchen counter untouched like a shrine. So when her birthday approached, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I spent weeks hunting through estate sales and antique shops until I found a vintage scrapbook that matched the era, cream linen cover, silk ribbon binding. I carefully transferred every single recipe card, preserving her mother's handwriting, adding protective sleeves, organizing them by season and occasion. I included blank pages at the back with a note, "For the new recipes you'll create and the memories still to come." Party was at a wine country estate Daniel and I had toured once on vacation. I remembered him saying his mom would love it there, so I booked it 8 weeks in advance. I taste-tested 3 different caterers. I personally arranged the florals, white peonies and garden roses, her favorites. I created a slideshow with photos I'd collected from Linda's siblings, from old albums, from Daniel's childhood friends I'd tracked down on social media. Daniel contributed by showing up. He'd been distant those last few months, but I told myself it was work stress. The startup was preparing for a second funding round. He was traveling more, coming home later, spending more time on his phone. When I tried to talk about it, he'd kiss my forehead and say, "You worry too much. Everything's fine." Party was perfect. Linda walked in and gasped. Tables were set with photographs of her at every decade, childhood, wedding day, becoming a mother, her teaching years. The slideshow played on a loop in the background, set to her favorite Carole King songs. Friends she hadn't seen in years had traveled to be there. When she saw the scrapbook, she sat down and cried. Real, body-shaking sobs. She held it against her chest like I'd given her back something she thought was lost forever. Daniel's Aunt Marlene hugged me and whispered, "You're already family's sweetheart." That's when Daniel decided to make a toast. He was 3 drinks in, loose and loud in that way he gets when he's performing for a crowd. He grabbed the microphone from the DJ booth, tapped it twice, and everyone turned to look. "I just want to say something about Emma," he started, and I smiled, assuming he was finally going to acknowledge the work I'd put in. Emma's great at this stuff. Parties, details, making people feel special. She's thoughtful. She's organized. She'd probably make someone a great wife someday. My smile froze. But let's be honest. He laughed, and a few people laughed with him, uncertain. She's not the marrying type. Not for me anyway. I mean, look at this party, it's beautiful, yeah, but it's also a lot. Like, this is my mom's birthday, not a royal wedding. Emma goes overboard. She can't help it. The room had gone quiet, but he didn't notice. Or didn't care. And that's fine for planning events or whatever, but marriage? That's about balance. About not making everything into a production. About knowing when to just chill. He took another sip of his drink. "So, Mom, happy birthday. Emma threw you an amazing party. But no, before anyone asks, I'm not marrying her." He said it like he was answering a question no one had asked. Like he was setting the record straight. Like he was doing everyone a favor. I stood there, cake knife still in my hand, and the room stayed silent. Not the thoughtful kind of silence, the suffocating kind. Kind where everyone suddenly finds their shoes very interesting. Linda's face had gone pale. She looked at Daniel, then at me, her mouth opening and closing like she couldn't find the words. Marlene broke the spell. "Daniel, what the hell is wrong with you?" But he just shrugged, oblivious. "What?" "I'm being honest. Everyone's always wondering, right? Now they know." I set the knife down carefully. I didn't trust my hands. "Excuse me," I said quietly and walked toward the exit. I made it to the parking lot before my knees buckled. I sat in my car for 20 minutes before anyone came looking for me. It wasn't Daniel. Linda opened the passenger door and slid in without asking. She didn't say anything at first, just sat there with her hands folded in her lap, staring straight ahead through the windshield. "I'm so sorry," I finally managed. My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. "I shouldn't have left. It's your party. Emma." She turned to look at me, and her eyes were wet. "You have nothing to apologize for." "I don't know what I did wrong." "You didn't do anything wrong. My son did." She reached over and squeezed my hand. "What he said in there was cruel and unnecessary, and I will be having words with him." Many words. I wanted to believe her, but all I could think about was the way people had looked at me. The pity. The second-hand embarrassment. The relief that it wasn't happening to them. "He's never talked about marriage," I said. "Not once in 6 years. But I never pushed because he always said we didn't need it, that what we had was enough." And I thought maybe he was right. That maybe I was being old-fashioned for even wanting it. Linda's jaw tightened. "Did you want it?" "I don't know anymore." I wiped my eyes. "I wanted him. I wanted a future." I thought those were the same thing. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "When Daniel's father proposed to me, it wasn't grand. We were eating pizza in my apartment and he had sauce on his chin. But he looked at me like I was the only person in the world who mattered. Like building a life with me was the most obvious thing he'd ever do." She paused. "I haven't seen my son look at you that way in a very long time. Maybe ever." Truth of it hit me like cold water. "I should go back inside," Linda said, opening the door. "This is still my party, and I won't let him ruin it completely." "But Emma, you don't owe him anything." "Not tonight." "Not ever." She left, and I sat there alone. Daniel finally came out 40 minutes later. He knocked on the window casual, like he was picking me up from work. I rolled it down halfway. "You good?" he asked. "Am I good?" Look, I didn't mean for it to come out like that. I was buzzed. People were asking questions, and I just wanted to clear the air. "What questions, Daniel?" "Who was asking?" He shifted his weight. "I don't know. People ask. Your friends, my friends." "When are you guys getting engaged?" "It gets old." "So you humiliated me in front of your entire family to avoid a hypothetical conversation?" "I didn't humiliate you." "Jesus, you're being dramatic." I stared at him. Really looked at him. The impatience in his face, the irritation that I wasn't letting this go, the complete absence of remorse. "You told 78 people I'm not worth marrying," I said slowly. "You said it while I was standing there holding a cake I ordered for your mother. After I spent 3 months planning a party you couldn't be bothered to help with. I told you the party was too much. You didn't have to do all that. Your mother cried, Daniel. She cried because for one night she felt like her mom was still alive. That's what too much looks like." He ran his hand through his hair, frustrated. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. You make everything so intense, so emotional." I can't just have a casual conversation without you turning it into some deep thing. You publicly declared you're not going to marry me. That's not casual. We've never even talked about marriage. Because you said we didn't need to. My voice cracked. Because you said what we had was enough. And I believed you. I built my life around believing you. Well, maybe you shouldn't have. The words landed like a slap. He didn't even flinch. Just stood there, waiting for me to say something, to cry, to fight, to do whatever he expected me to do so he could feel justified in walking away. I rolled up the window. He knocked again. Emma, come on. Don't be like this. I started the engine. Emma! I drove away and watched him disappear in the rearview mirror. I went home, to the apartment we'd shared for 4 years, the one where I'd organized his closet and meal prepped his lunches and kept his mother's birthday card collection in a special drawer because he could never remember to buy them on time. I walked through rooms that suddenly felt like evidence of my own stupidity. The bookshelf I'd arranged by color because he said it looked better. Coffee table I'd picked out because he hated shopping for furniture. Kitchen where I'd learned to make his favorite meals, his preferred coffee, his mother's recipe for pot roast. I'd spent 6 years making space for him. He'd spent 6 years assuming I'd always be there. I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch until sunrise, staring at nothing, waiting for the shock to wear off. It didn't. Daniel came home around 9 in the morning, sheepish and hungover. We should talk, he said. Okay. He sat down across from me, elbows on his knees, doing his thoughtful pose. Last night got out of hand. It did. I was drunk, and I said some things I shouldn't have said the way I said them. I waited. But Emma, we do need to have this conversation. About expectations. About where this is going. Where is it going, Daniel? He hesitated. I don't know. And I think that's the problem. You want certainty. You want timelines and promises. And I'm not there yet. It's been 6 years. I know. But I don't want to make a decision because of pressure or guilt or because everyone else thinks we should. That's not fair to either of us. I nodded slowly. You're right. He looked relieved. I'm glad you. It's not fair to me, I said. To keep waiting for you to decide if I'm worth the commitment. You're right about that. His expression shifted. That's not what I meant. I know what you meant. I stood up. I'm going to stay with my sister for a few days. I need space to think. Emma, don't do this. Don't make this into some big dramatic. I'm not making it into anything. You already did that. In front of your entire family. I packed a bag while he followed me around the apartment, explaining, justifying, backtracking. I stopped listening somewhere around the part where he told me I was overreacting. At my sister Rachel's house, I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, her face getting progressively darker. When I finished, she said, I'm going to say something and you're not going to like it. Go ahead. He's been showing you who he is for years. You just kept deciding to see someone else. She was right. I didn't like it. But I also couldn't argue with it. I stayed at Rachel's for 5 days. Daniel texted 47 times. Called 16. Left voicemails that ranged from apologetic to annoyed to confused about why I was still upset. On day 6, Linda called me. I need to tell you something, she said. And I debated whether I should, but I think you deserve to know. My stomach dropped. Okay. Daniel brought someone to brunch yesterday. A woman from his office named Jessica. He introduced her as a friend, but Emma, the way he looked at her. The way she looked at him. She paused. I don't think this is new. The room tilted. How long do you think? I don't know. But when I asked him about you, he said you two were taking a break to figure things out. He made it sound mutual. Like it was your idea. Course he did. Thank you for telling me, I said quietly. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. You deserved so much better than this. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time staring at my phone. Then I opened my laptop. I didn't go back to the apartment that week. Instead, I called my landlord. The apartment was in my name. Daniel had moved in with me 3 years ago when his lease ended, and asked about the lease terms. 60 days notice to add or remove a tenant. I called my bank. Our accounts were separate, thank God, but I'd been paying 70% of the rent because he was saving for the future. Our future, he'd said. I called my boss and asked about the remote work policy. Then I called a lawyer. Not for anything dramatic. Just to understand my options, my rights, the clean way to extract myself from a life I'd built around someone who'd been planning his exit while I planned his mother's birthday. On day 9, I went back to the apartment. Daniel was at work. I packed methodically, my clothes, my books, my grandmother's dishes he'd always said were too fancy for everyday use. The coffee maker I'd bought. The stand mixer. The framed photos of my family. I left everything we'd bought together. Couch, the TV, the bed. I didn't want them anymore. They felt contaminated. I took only what was mine. I left a note on the counter. You have 45 days to find a new place. Lease ends November 30th. I won't be renewing. Thanks for clarifying where we stand. I moved in with Rachel temporarily and started looking for a one-bedroom. Something small, something mine, something that didn't echo with 6 years of almosts. Daniel called that night, furious. You can't just kick me out. I'm not kicking you out. The lease is ending. I gave you plenty of notice. This is insane. Where am I supposed to go? I don't know, Daniel. Maybe Jessica has space. Silence. Who told you? It doesn't matter. What matters is you've been lying to me while I've been sitting here thinking we were going to work this out. It's not like that. She's just... I don't care. And I realized I meant it. I don't care what she is or isn't. I don't care about your explanations. I'm done. You're being irrational. No. I'm being clear. Maybe for the first time in 6 years. I hung up. He tried calling back. I blocked him. He showed up at Rachel's house 2 days later. She answered the door. She doesn't want to see you, Rachel said. This is between me and Emma. No, it's not. Not anymore. You made sure of that when you humiliated her in public and then lied about her to your mother. I didn't. Your mother called her, Daniel. She knows about Jessica. Everyone knows. You're not the victim here, so stop acting like it. She closed the door in his face. Through the window, I watched him stand there for a moment, confused, like he couldn't quite believe this was happening. Like he'd expected me to break eventually, to come back, to accept whatever crumbs he offered because that's what I'd always done. Then he left. I found an apartment 3 weeks later. A one-bedroom in a converted warehouse downtown, exposed brick and huge windows, the kind of place I'd always wanted but never mentioned because Daniel preferred modern and minimalist. I signed the lease on a Friday. Moved in on a Saturday. Rachel helped me paint the bedroom a deep navy blue Daniel would have hated. I bought new sheets, new towels, new everything. I wanted nothing that smelled like him, felt like him, reminded me of the future I'd imagined. On Sunday, Linda texted me, "Heard you found a place. I'm so proud of you. Lunch next week." We met at a cafe she chose. She hugged me for a long time when I arrived. "How are you really?" she asked. "I'm okay. Some days better than others." "Daniel's been asking about you." "I'm sure he has." She smiled sadly. "He doesn't understand why you won't talk to him. He thinks you're being stubborn." "Of course he does." For what it's worth, Jessica didn't last. 2 weeks after you left, she ended it. Apparently, she thought he was actually single. I should have felt vindicated. I mostly felt tired. He came to me last week, Linda continued. Said he made a mistake. That he wants you back. What did you tell him? I told him some mistakes you don't get to fix. That some people only realize what they had when it's too late, and that's their burden to carry, not yours. She reached across the table and took my hand. You were the best thing that ever happened to him, Emma. He just wasn't smart enough to see it until you were gone. I don't think he sees it even now, I said. I think he just misses having someone who made his life easier. You're probably right. She squeezed my hand. But you're going to be fine. Better than fine. She was right. First month alone was hard. I'd wake up reaching for someone who wasn't there, make too much coffee out of habit, set the table for two before remembering. But slowly, the apartment started feeling less like a placeholder and more like home. I hung art I'd always loved. I bought plants Daniel would have said were too much work. I started cooking recipes I wanted to try instead of meals I knew he'd eat. I went to book clubs and pottery classes and Sunday farmers markets. I said yes to drinks with co-workers I'd always been too busy to get to know. I stopped waiting for my life to start when someone decided I was worth it. I started living it anyway. 6 months later, I ran into Daniel at a coffee shop. He looked smaller somehow, tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. Emma. Hi. Daniel. You look good. Really good. Thank you. An awkward pause. Then, I've been wanting to talk to you. To apologize. For everything. Okay. I was an idiot. I didn't appreciate what I had, and I took you for granted, and I'm sorry. I really am. I nodded. I appreciate that. Do you think... He hesitated. Do you think we could try again? Start over. I looked at him. Really looked. And I felt nothing. No anger, no longing, no unfinished business. Just the distant recognition of someone I used to know. No, I said simply. I don't. Emma, please. I've changed. I know I have. Maybe you have. But I have too. And the person I am now knows she deserves better than someone who needs to lose her to figure out her worth. His face fell. So that's it. That's it. I picked up my coffee and walked away. I didn't look back. That night I called Linda. I saw Daniel today, I told her. How did it go? He asked for another chance. And I said no. Cleanly. Finally. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, good girl. We stayed close, Linda and I. She became less like an ex's mother and more like the family I chose. We had lunch once a month, texted about books and recipes and life. She never mentioned Daniel unless I asked, which I rarely did. A year after the party, she sent me a photo. It was the scrapbook I'd made, open on her kitchen table, recipe cards spread around it. The text said, making your grandmother's apple cake today. Thank you for giving her back to me. You'll always be family to me, sweetheart. No matter what. Cried reading it. Good tears this time. Because I'd learned something in that year. Something Daniel's cruelty had accidentally taught me. You don't lose your worth when someone fails to see it. You only lose it when you stop seeing it yourself. I had stopped for 6 years. Measured myself by his standards, his timeline, his version of what I should be. Never again. Now when I look in the mirror, I see someone whole. Someone who doesn't need permission to take up space or apologize for wanting more or shrink herself to fit into someone else's idea of manageable. I see someone who knows that being too much for the wrong person just means you're exactly enough for yourself. And that, it turns out, is the only revenge that matters. Not his regret. Not his apology. Not his realization of what he lost. Just my peace. My life. My terms. He took the microphone that night and told everyone I'd I'd never be wife material. He was right. I was never meant to be his wife. I was meant to be my own person. And that's exactly who I became.